Welcome everyone to another coffee tasting. My name is Aaron Taylor. I'm your host. Today we're tasting the Costa Rica Alsacia, and this one is a very special coffee because of the impact that it has on the environment and agricultural science and what it means for the future of coffee and the future of agricultural science as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that after we're done tasting the coffee. So the Costa Rica Alsacia is a small lot coffee, and it is one of the first farms that Starbucks has owned. Um, so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then so in my coffee tastings, I like to brew my coffee two different ways. I brew it on the French press and the pour over, and that way we get to really explore the different flavors that you get from different brew methods. And that's important because you might not like a coffee a particular way, but then you might like it the other way. And I've actually found that a lot to be very true in a lot of my coffee tastings that I've done recently, where I really don't like the French press, but I like the pour over, or I like the French press, but don't like the pour over. So the way you brew your coffee is going to be very important depending on the particular flavors that you're going to be looking for. And so that's why I brew the coffee two different ways, so we can explore the different flavors that we get from the same cup of coffee, but different brew methods. So, the Costa Rica Alsacia is one of my favorite blends. This one is a very smooth, mellow blend, nice milk chocolate notes with like a berry sweetness. Um, so I really, really like this one. Uh, I'm probably gonna like the French press a little bit more versus the pour over, and the reason why is because with the French press it brings forward more of those milk chocolate notes, those bitters, and then kind of like makes the bright acidic flavors kind of take a back seat. And so that's kind of why I like the French press more on like Latin American coffees, but I do prefer Latin American coffees over any other coffee pretty much, just because of those flavors that the area provides. I really like the caramely sweetness or those nutty flavors, and then the milk chocolate and dark chocolate flavor notes that you really get from those Latin American coffees. All right. So with small lot coffee, you're getting very distinct flavors of where the coffee comes from, and then also each small lot coffee has its own story to tell too. That's my favorite part of the small lot coffees is we're really exploring specific regions of the world through the flavor of coffee and through learning the history and culture of that land. So we're going to learn a little bit about the culture of the Costa Rica region of Alsacia, or yes, Hacienda Alsacia, which is on the slopes of the Poas volcano. And so that's why the coffee here thrives so well, is because you have the nitrogen rich soil with the lush lands and the volcanic soil. So you've got like this nutrient rich soil for the coffee to thrive. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well after we taste our coffee here. So the pour over looks like it's ready, so we're going to go ahead and taste the pour over while we wait for the French press to finish up. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and smell the coffee. And so immediately right off the bat, I'm getting that bright acidic aromas right off the bat, but then there is a little bit of that milk chocolate scent that's coming off as well. But it's right now with the pour over, I'm primarily getting those bright flavor scents. That's actually really smooth. So right now I'm getting like quite a bit on the sides of a bright tanginess. Um, a little bit going on in the center. What's nice is after the palate starts to clear, I'm left with like an even wash. There's like I'm still got like some bright acidicness going on the sides of my tongue, and then I've got that slight bitterness flavor going as well. But it doesn't linger on very much, so it's already starting to clear. It's pretty much gone. So this is a nice clean cup of coffee, the Alsacia. Costa Rica Alsacia on a pour over. Really, really good. We're not really tasting a lot of those milk chocolate notes, but we're gonna taste a lot. We're gonna taste that a lot more over here. All right, so let's get this plunged down here. If you guys are joining me for the first time, welcome to the live stream. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below, and that truly helps the channel. If you guys are joining me for a second time or you're returning, welcome back. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you guys are learning a lot. This story is going to be really cool that we're going to delve into here about the Costa Rica Alsacia and the importance of agricultural science and how it's going to impact the shape of the future when it comes to not just coffee, but all types of plants. Alright, so we're getting a lot more of those bitter notes that's coming through, and there's not the aromas. It's interesting because on the pour over you're getting a whole lot of that bright acidic aroma coming off. This is like it's almost no acidic flavors. It's all dark notes. Wow, that is very, very clean, especially for a French press. So I'm getting very, very light acidic notes, but I'm mainly getting those milk chocolate bitters. And it's not such an intense bitter to where you're just like, oh my gosh. It's nice and subtle. It's really good. This coffee has a really clean wash. Doesn't really doesn't hold on to your tongue. It seems it's really nice. Really easy to drink. You're not going to be left over. You're not going to be left with that uncomfortable mouth feel that some coffees might leave you with. That you have to pair like a food item to alleviate, or just add some kind of creamer. So this coffee is really good. Um, Costa Rica Alsacia is definitely one of my favorite small lot coffees out there. Not because of just the flavor, but because of the story that's behind it. And so let's talk a little bit about Costa Rica Alsacia. So Costa Rica Alsacia first acquired coffee in the 1700s. Before that, they dealt in other farm crops, but in 1700s is when coffee was introduced, and it's located on the slopes of the Poas volcano. And so with that, you're getting the lush nitrogen-enriched soil, and then you have the lush forests all around. So you have the foliage covering the ground, and when the foliage like dies and decays, that's releasing nutrients into the ground. So you have like this perfect environment to start growing coffee. So it just like when they started cultivating coffee, they were really getting like exceptional grade flavor coffee. And then in the 1970s is when Victor Trejos and his family started running the Costa Rica Alsacia farm. And when Victor Trejos himself took over the farm from inherited the farm, uh, he he continued to grow coffee, and they perfected their ways of growing coffee. But when he had sons of his own, they didn't want to get into farming coffee. So he didn't really have anyone to hand the farm down to, and he was getting too old to really run the farm himself anymore. And so what he did was he sold the farm to Starbucks, and it's kind of like a partnership. So Starbucks owns the farm now, but Victor Trejos himself still works there as a general manager of the farm. He still runs the farm the way he did before with his family, with the traditions that they had. So that's still alive, and that's what's really cool about that is because even though Starbucks owns the farm, the traditions of the family who ran the farm before is still there, and even Victor Trejos, who is a part of that family, is still the general manager of the farm because it's so much a part of him that he still gets to be a part of it, but Starbucks pretty much uh, pays for facilities and stuff. So that is a really cool part. And then so we have the next story of the Alsacia farm, which is now that Starbucks owns the farm, they introduced a dedicated nursery to agricultural science. And this dedicated nursery is ran by Carlos Mario Rodriguez. And so Carlos Mario Rodriguez is one of the top agronomists that works for Starbucks. And what he does is he studies the way that coffee thrives in different environments and tries to perfect how they thrive. And one of the ways that he does this is he actually takes Arabica beans and Robusto beans and splices them together to create a hybrid. And so, right now in Latin America, a lot of farms are being impacted by what's called the rust disease. And what the rust disease is when the leaves turn the color rust and then they're no longer able to photosynthesize properly. And so, when they can't photosynthesize properly, they're not able to make the fruit and beans that you would normally get. So, you're losing out on your entire crops. And so when you have farms losing their entire crops, it's not just a farm that's losing their crops, that's a family losing out on their entire year's worth of money that they would normally get from selling that crop. So you're being impacted big time by losing out on a farm by this rust disease. And so Arabica beans, which is what Starbucks normally deals with, grows at higher elevations, and at the higher elevations we're dealing with cooler temperatures, and then at the lower elevations we have the Robusto beans, and the Robusto beans we're getting the warmer temperatures. Now because of global warming and climate change, we're starting to see those warmer temperatures rise up into those higher elevations. And because we're seeing those warmer temperatures in these higher elevations where Arabica beans grow, we're starting to see the rust disease hit these Arabica plants that don't have the resistance for the rust disease because they don't typically see it because they need a warmer climate. And so now that we're seeing that warmer climate, we're being hit with rust. And so the reason why they chose to splice the Arabica beans with the Robusto hybrid beans is because the Robusto hybrid already grows at the lower elevation, which means it's already used to growing in a warmer climate. And because it's used to growing in a warmer climate, it already has the resistances to rust disease. So they spliced these Robusto beans with the Arabica beans and kind of created a hybrid plant and then produced offspring of that plant to create new coffee trees until they produced one that can still produce the robust flavors of the Arabica bean, but have the traits of a Robusto bean where it can resist the rust disease. And that's important because they were able to replace the entire farm of Costa Rica Alsacia with these Robusto Arabica hybrids that's resistant to the rust disease. And when they cropped it, it was an exceptional cup of coffee. It's one of my favorite cups. To this day, it's one of my favorite blends of coffee. Really, really good. And since it passed the test and it was the okay for the gopher to move on to other farms, Starbucks started the initiative to where every time they sold a bag of coffee, they replaced a coffee tree on a coffee farm in Latin America. And they have replaced entire farms, replanted entire farms with this Robusto Arabica hybrid. And it's very important because it's helping farmers adapt to a warming climate and climate change, and preparing them for what they might have lost out on an entire farm of coffee, or even some of the farms that were already in disarray and couldn't come back because they were already being impacted by the rust disease. Those were the ones that were first helped. So we really first helped out the ones that were already being impacted, and now we're slowly replacing the farms that aren't really being impacted but are in danger of the rust disease. And that's really cool because we're really stopping the extinction of the Arabica blend by agricultural science and the innovativeness of Carlos Mario Rodriguez and the things that he's doing over there in Costa Rica. So that's the important thing about Costa Rica Alsacia, and how it's going to shape the future for agricultural science. Because you have, when we eventually start expanding into space and into Mars, we're going to start using some of those practices where we take different traits of plants and we start to apply them to other plants so that they can thrive better in like a colder environment or a low gravity environment. Because say if you're in a low gravity environment, you're not going to need a sturdy stem and sturdy branches. So you could take some of that energy that's going into producing sturdy branches and a sturdy stem and actually use that to create more fruit, or maybe more flavorful fruit. So there's always that. So you could have like coffee farms in space that grow like grapevines instead of actual trees, because you don't need that sturdiness of the actual tree. And so there's all kinds of scientific practices that can go into place with this type of technology. And it doesn't even have to take place within coffee either. So these kind of practices can go outside coffee. You can start, and they already do this with other types of fruit and vegetables and stuff, where they splice different variants together to create types that would thrive more in more environments. That's how you have fruit that's being able to grow in different biospheres than where they're normally found, is because they take like plantains and bananas, and that's just an example where, like, the bananas that we normally eat today, those aren't the normal bananas that were found hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They've adapted and changed them so that they're easily grown in different parts of the world and exported easily. And that's just through natural selection and just taking different variants and putting them together, and that's all that is. And so that's the really cool science about it, and that's how coffee is going to shape the future of agricultural science, and then the future of farmers in Latin America and around the world when it comes to a warming climate and climate change. If you guys enjoyed today's coffee tasting, go ahead and hit the link down below. That's going to be a list of all the videos that I've done in the past. The link above is just a video that YouTube thinks that you might like. Thanks again for joining, and I will see you guys this Friday. Have a great day.